The Krell Dominion had been burning its way across the outer rim of the galaxy for 300 years. Their ships moved like locusts through space, leaving nothing but death and silence behind them. 47 civilizations had fallen before their endless swarms. 47 unique cultures, languages, and dreams had been erased from existence. The Krell themselves were nightmares made flesh. They stood 8 feet tall on 6 chitinous legs, with bodies covered in black armor that could repair itself within hours. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness of their ships, and their mandibles could crush steel. But the worst thing about them was not their appearance. It was their mind. They shared one consciousness across billions of individuals. When one Krell learned something, they all knew it. When one Krell died, the others barely noticed. This hive mind made them perfect killers. They felt no fear, no mercy, no doubt. They simply consumed and moved forward. Now they had come to Valesia. The Valesian homeworld hung in space like a blue and green jewel. From orbit, you could see the crystalline cities that caught the sunlight and scattered it into rainbows. The Valesians were a gentle people, known across the galaxy for their art, music, and philosophy. They communicated through telepathy, sharing thoughts and emotions as easily as others spoke words. War was foreign to them. Violence was something they had read about in ancient history books, not something they practiced. That made them perfect victims. The Krell blockade surrounded Valesia like a dark cloud. Hundreds of bioships pulsed with organic technology, their weapons charged and ready. Inside the largest vessel, the Hive Admiral surveyed the planet below with cold calculation. The Valesians had some defense ships, but they were designed for exploration, not combat. This would be easy. On Valesia's surface, billions of telepathic voices cried out in shared terror. They had sent distress signals to the Galactic Council weeks ago. They had begged for help, for protection, for anything. The Council had promised to send aid. But the Council always promised and rarely delivered. In the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, representatives from 30 species gathered in emergency session. The chamber was built to inspire cooperation, with seats arranged in a circle so no one species sat above another. But right now that circle felt like a cage. "We must act," shouted Ambassador Tyros, his blue scales shimmering with agitation. His people, the Sariwans, had narrowly escaped Krell invasion 2 decades ago. They still remembered the terror. "The Valesians will be extinct by tomorrow if we do nothing." "And what would you have us do?" replied Counselor Vex, her mechanical voice cold and precise. "The last 3 military coalitions we sent against the Krell were destroyed. Completely. We lost over 2,000 ships and gained nothing but corpses." The chamber fell silent. Everyone remembered those defeats. The Krell could not be beaten by conventional means. Their numbers were too great, their regeneration too fast, their coordination too perfect. Perhaps we could negotiate," suggested a smaller delegate, his voice barely a whisper. "Negotiate what?" Tyros snapped. "The Krell do not negotiate. They do not want territory or resources or power. They want extinction. They want to be the only ones left." As the Council argued in circles, the battle for Valesia began. The Valesian defense fleet consisted of 42 ships. They were beautiful vessels, designed with elegant curves and artistic detail. They moved into formation between their homeworld and the Krell swarm, knowing they were about to die but unable to do anything else. The telepathic cries of their planet echoed in every defender's mind. They could feel the fear of their children, their parents, their loved ones. They could not abandon them. Commander Celis stood on the bridge of the flagship Dawn's Prayer. She was young for a commander, barely 50 years old, but war had come too quickly for tradition. Through the viewport, she could see the Krell bioships beginning their approach. They moved with horrible purpose, like spiders crawling across a web. "All ship and spread formation pattern 7, she transmitted, her mental voice steady despite the fear in her heart. "We cannot stop them, but we can delay them. Every minute we buy is another minute for evacuation ships to reach the southern continent." The Krell opened fire first. Biological projectiles, acidic plasma, and living missiles crossed the space between the fleets. The Valesian shields held for perhaps 10 seconds before beginning to fail. These were science vessels with defensive upgrades, not warships. They were never meant for this. The Dawn's Prayer shuddered as something tore through her port side. Atmosphere vented into space, taking 6 crew members with it. Celis felt their terror as they died, felt it echo through her mind like a scream, but she forced herself to focus. She fired the ship's weapons, managing to damage one Krell vessel before 3 more surrounded her position. One by one, the Valasian ships fell. They fought with desperation and courage, but courage meant nothing against overwhelming force. Within 20 minutes, only 12 ships remained. Within 40 minutes, only 3. Within an hour, the Dawn's Prayer drifted alone in the void. Her engines destroyed and her hull breached in a dozen places. Commander Celis watched through the cracked viewport as the Krell invasion pods began launching toward her homeworld. Thousands of them carrying millions of soldiers. She had failed. They had all failed. Then something impossible happened. The sensor officer, half buried under debris, suddenly gasped. "Commander, there's something on long-range scanners. A ship. A big one." Celis pulled herself to the sensor console, her body aching from injuries. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a contact approaching from the unexplored regions of space. It was massive, larger than any Krell bioship, and its energy signature was completely unknown. "What species is that?" Celis asked. I don't know, Commander. It's not in any database. The design is strange. The materials are strange. Everything about it is wrong." The mysterious ship maintained a steady course directly toward the Krell fleet. It ignored all hailing frequencies. It did not slow down or change direction. It simply came forward alone toward an armada of 500 warships. On the Krell command vessel, the Hive Admiral received notification of the intruder. Through the shared consciousness of the Dominion, it analyzed the approaching ship. The conclusion was unanimous, insignificant. 1 ship against 500. It would be destroyed quickly. But something about the ship's design troubled the Hive Admiral. It was crude, using what appeared to be primitive kinetic weapons and basic nuclear technology. The hull was covered in strange markings and symbols, and on its side, in letters that the Krell computer slowly translated, was a name, USNS Indomitable. Below that, 2 more words, United Earth. The Hive Admiral had never heard of Earth, but that was about to change. For humanity, for all its violence and warfare and bloodshed throughout history, had finally found a purpose for all those hard-learned lessons. They had found someone who truly deserved their fury. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threatened the innocent in front of those who had mastered the art of war. The Hive Admiral watched the approaching vessel with the cold calculation that came from 3 centuries of conquest. 1 ship, 500 of theirs. The mathematics were simple. The outcome was certain. Still, protocol demanded a response to any threat, no matter how insignificant. "Dispatch Squadron 7, the Hive Admiral commanded through the shared consciousness. "Eliminate the intruder, quickly." 50 Krell war cruisers broke formation and accelerated toward the human battleship. Each cruiser was a masterpiece of biological engineering, grown rather than built, with weapons that had shattered planets and shields that had withstood nuclear fire. The squadron moved in perfect coordination, their hive mind allowing them to react as one entity. They closed to weapons range and prepared to fire. Then, for the first time in over an hour, the mysterious ship responded to hails. The transmission was audio only, the words translated through Galactic Standard Protocol. The voice was female, calm and utterly unbothered by the 50 warships targeting her vessel. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Naval Ship Indomitable. You are engaged in acts of genocide against a peaceful species. Stand down immediately or be eliminated." For 3 full seconds, the Hive Admiral processed this statement. Eliminated? This single ship threatened to eliminate them? The concept was so absurd that even the perfect unity of the hive mind seemed to pause in confusion. "Destroy it," the Hive Admiral ordered. Squadron 7 opened fire. Bioplasma cannons unleashed torrents of superheated matter. Acid missiles tracked toward the human ship from multiple angles. Living mines were deployed to surround and consume the target. It was enough firepower to crack a moon in half. The Indomitable's response was immediate and terrifying. Point defense systems erupted across the battleship's hull. Thousands of small railguns tracked and fired in perfect synchronization, each shot calculated by sophisticated artificial intelligence. The bioplasma was scattered by precisely timed kinetic impacts. The acid missiles were detonated at safe distances. The living mines were shredded before they could close to effective range. Then the Indomitable returned fire. The Krell had never seen weapons like these. Railguns accelerated tungsten rounds to significant fractions of light speed, each projectile carrying kinetic energy equivalent to small nuclear weapons. They punched through Krell bioarmor like it was tissue paper, continuing through multiple ships before their energy finally dissipated. Missile tubes opened along the Indomitable's flanks, launching salvos of nuclear-tipped warheads. But these were not simple atomic weapons. Each warhead was a complex system of shaped charges, electromagnetic lenses, and tactical programming. When they detonated, they didn't just explode. They focused their blast into narrow cones of pure devastation, creating what human engineers called Kasaba howitzers. X-ray lasers and streams of nuclear plasma crossed the distance between ships at light speed. The Krell ships had shields designed to deflect energy weapons. But these weapons were kinetic and nuclear, technologies the Krell had abandoned thousands of years ago as primitive and inefficient. Their shields might as well have been made of paper. In the first minute, 12 Krell ships were destroyed. In the second minute, 15 more were crippled or vented to space. By the fourth minute, 35 of the 50 ships in Squadron 7 were gone, and the survivors were trying desperately to retreat. On the Indomitable's bridge, Captain Sarah Chen watched the tactical display with professional detachment. She was 42 years old, a veteran of the Belt Wars and the Martian Rebellion. She had spent her entire adult life learning how to kill efficiently. Earth's bloody history had prepared her well. "Cease fire," she ordered. "Let the survivors run back to their fleet. I want them to report what happened here." "Aye, Captain," replied Lieutenant Morrison from the tactical station. "All weapons safed." "Jesus, that was almost too easy." "Don't underestimate them," Chen warned. "They've conquered half the galaxy for a reason. We just caught them by surprise. They've been fighting species that abandoned kinetic weapons and nuclear technology centuries ago. They forgot how dangerous simple physics can be." Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council watched through long-range sensors, their confidence in their own military doctrines suddenly shaken. For 3,000 years, galactic warfare had evolved toward energy weapons, plasma cannons, and defensive shields. Kinetic weapons were considered obsolete, too slow and too limited in an age of faster-than-light travel. But the humans had proven something the Council had forgotten. It doesn't matter how fast your shields recharge if a tungsten rod moving at a fraction of light speed punches through them before they can react. Ambassador Tyro stared at the tactical display in disbelief. They destroyed 35 ships in 4 minutes. 35. Using weapons we abandoned before we achieved spaceflight. "Not abandoned," corrected Counselor Vex, her mechanical mind rapidly analyzing the battle data. "We evolved past them. We assumed energy weapons were superior. But the humans never stopped developing kinetic systems. They weaponized physics itself. On the Krell command ship, the Hive Admiral received the reports from the survivors of Squadron 7. The shared consciousness processed the information instantly. This was not an insignificant threat. This was something new, something dangerous, something that needed to be crushed immediately before it could threaten the Dominion's expansion. Pride and fury filled the hive mind. No single ship had ever stood against them and survived. This insult could not be tolerated. The invasion of Valesia could wait an hour. First, they would destroy this arrogant newcomer and add its wreckage to the graveyard of those who had opposed them. "All ships," the Hive Admiral commanded, "abandon the blockade. Converge on the human vessel. I want 500 ships surrounding it within 10 minutes. Use overwhelming numbers. Crush them with sheer mass. Show them that defiance means death." The Krell Armada turned as one, a swarm of biological warships moving with horrible purpose. They formed a sphere around the projected position of the Indomitable, closing in from all sides. There would be no escape, no clever maneuvers, no possibility of survival. Just extinction. On Valesia, Commander Celis watched from the crippled Dawn's Prayer as the Krell fleet surrounded the human ship. She wanted to feel hope, but hope seemed foolish. One ship against 500. The humans had won one battle, but this was impossible. She tried to warn them. Her communications were barely functional, but she managed to send a tight beam transmission to the Indomitable. "Human vessel, retreat while you can. They will destroy you. You cannot fight them all. Please run. You tried to help us. We are grateful, but this is suicide." Captain Chen received the message and smiled grimly. She understood the Valesians' concern. By any reasonable military doctrine, this was suicide. One ship could not fight 500. It was mathematical impossibility. But Earth had never been reasonable. Humanity had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war, fighting themselves with increasingly sophisticated brutality. They had learned how to win when outnumbered, how to turn disadvantages into advantages, how to make the enemy's strengths into weaknesses. They had learned that warfare was not about fair fights or honorable combat. It was about winning, whatever the cost. Send a message to all Galactic Council observers, Chen ordered. Tell them to watch carefully. They're about to learn what humans mean by total war. On the tactical display, the Krell sphere was nearly complete. 500 ships surrounded them, weapons charged, ready to fire simultaneously and annihilate the Indomitable in a storm of bioplasma and living weapons. Captain Chen sat in her command chair, calm and focused. She had fought worse odds during the Belt Wars, when her cruiser had been ambushed by a full pirate fleet near Jupiter. She had survived because she understood a simple truth. Numbers only mattered if you fought the enemy's battle. The key was to make them fight yours. All hands, battle stations, she announced over the ship-wide intercom. This is going to get rough. Tactical, prepare firing solution Omega-7. Engineering, I need emergency power to kinetic systems. Helm, be ready for rapid maneuvering on my mark. She leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the approaching enemy. Let's show these bugs what Earth's children learned from centuries of warfare. All weapons free. Engage at will. The Indomitable, alone against 500, opened fire, and the galaxy learned to fear humanity. Space erupted into chaos. The Indomitable did not fight like any warship the Krell had encountered before. It did not hold position and trade fire. It did not try to break through the encirclement. Instead, it dove directly toward the densest concentration of enemy ships, accelerating to speeds that should have been suicide. She's insane, breathed Ambassador Tyros as he watched from the council chambers. She's flying into the middle of them. But Captain Chen was not insane. She was calculating. The Krell had surrounded her ship in a perfect sphere, every vessel positioned to create overlapping fields of fire with no gaps. It was textbook military doctrine, designed to ensure the target could not escape and would be hit from all sides simultaneously. It was also a fatal mistake. The Indomitable's first action was to launch a spread of nuclear-pumped mines behind it. These were not traditional mines that waited for enemy ships to approach. Instead, they detonated immediately, creating massive clouds of superheated plasma and electromagnetic interference. The expanding spheres of destruction crashed into the following Krell ships, overwhelming their sensors and shields. While the Krell behind her were blinded, Chen executed a maneuver that human pilots called threading the needle. She aimed the Indomitable directly between two enemy ships, close enough that their own weapons could not target her without hitting each other. The Krell, acting through their hive mind, made a unanimous decision: hold fire to avoid friendly casualties. They would reposition and then shoot. That 3-second decision cost them dearly. As the Indomitable passed between the two Krell ships, her point defense systems opened fire at point-blank range. Railguns tore through hull plating. Armor-piercing missiles detonated inside enemy vessels. The two flanking ships were gutted in seconds, their biological systems failing as atmosphere vented and crew died. Then Chen did something that made every military observer in the galaxy pause in disbelief. She used Valesia's gravity well. Helm, slingshot maneuver, execute now, she ordered. The Indomitable dove toward the planet, using its gravity to accelerate beyond what her engines alone could achieve. The Krell pursued, 500 ships chasing one, all of them increasing speed to catch their prey. They were so focused on the kill that they failed to notice they were all following the same trajectory, bunching up as they curved around the planet. Captain Chen waited until the perfect moment. Fire solution Omega-7. All guns. Now. The Indomitable had been built on the philosophy that you could never have too many guns. Her design included 42 railgun batteries, 80 missile tubes, and 36 point defense clusters. They all fired simultaneously, not at the pursuing ships, but at the space debris field created from the earlier battle. Hundreds of tungsten rounds struck the wreckage of destroyed Krell vessels, dead Valesian ships, and random space debris. The kinetic impacts sent shrapnel flying in all directions, each piece accelerated to lethal velocities. The pursuing Krell fleet flew directly into this expanding cloud of destruction. It was like flying through a sandstorm made of knives. Small impacts became penetrating hits. Penetrating hits became cascading failures. Ships crashed into each other trying to evade. The perfect coordination of the hive mind became a liability as panic spread through the shared consciousness. The Krell lost 60 ships in that single maneuver. Not destroyed outright, but damaged, crippled, leaking atmosphere and crew. They were combat ineffective, drifting hazards that made the battlefield even more dangerous for their allies. Humans, Counselor Vex said quietly, her mechanical voice carrying a note of something that might have been admiration, have turned debris into a weapon. They are using the Krell's own dead against them. The battle continued for 2 more hours. It was brutal, desperate, and unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The Indomitable fought with a ferocity that seemed impossible for a single ship. Captain Chen demonstrated tactics that no military academy in the Council taught, because no one had fought wars the way humanity had. She used the planet's atmosphere to hide in sensor shadows. She fired missiles on ballistic trajectories that took 30 minutes to reach their targets, forcing the Krell to maintain defensive awareness across huge volumes of space. She even launched empty cargo containers on random vectors, forcing the enemy to waste ammunition on decoys. But the most shocking moment came when the Krell made their final, desperate play. The Hive Admiral, watching the casualties mount to obscene numbers, made a decision born of frustration and fury. The Krell would use their greatest advantage, close combat. They would board the human ship and tear it apart from within. 300 Krell bioships accelerated to ramming speed, their hulls reinforced for impact. They would crash into the Indomitable, breach her hull, and send thousands of Krell warriors into her corridors. In close combat, the Krell were unmatched. Their regenerative abilities, their physical strength, their fearless hive mind coordination made them perfect killing machines in tight spaces. It should have worked. Captain Chen watched the approaching boarders with grim satisfaction. They're coming in hard, good. Marines, prepare to repel boarders. Show them what power armor can do. The first Krell bioship crashed into the Indomitable's port side, its organic hull splitting open to disgorge 100 warriors. They poured through the breach like a flood of chitinous nightmares, mandibles clicking with anticipation, ready to tear through the soft-bodied aliens who dared challenge the Dominion. They made it approximately 15 feet before encountering something they had never seen before. Human Marines in Mark 7 power armor. The armor stood 9 feet tall and weighed half a ton. It was powered by compact fusion reactors and equipped with integrated weapon systems. Each Marine was essentially a walking tank, capable of lifting a car, surviving in vacuum, and delivering firepower that could destroy light vehicles. The Krell charged with their usual fearless aggression. The Marines opened fire with rotary cannons that fired explosive rounds at 4,000 rounds per minute. The corridor became a meat grinder. Krell bodies were literally torn apart by the sustained fire, their regenerative abilities overwhelmed by sheer destructive power. When the Krell tried to close to melee range, they discovered that human power armor was not just for show. The Marines met them hand-to-hand, using servo-enhanced strength to literally rip Krell warriors apart. One Marine grabbed a Krell by 2 of its legs and used it as a club to beat 3 others to death before discarding the broken corpse. The boarding action lasted 7 minutes. In that time, over 600 Krell warriors entered the Indomitable. 53 made it deeper than the first 3 corridors. None survived. The human casualty report showed 4 Marines with minor injuries and 1 with a damaged armor servo. The Hive Admiral, experiencing the shared death of hundreds of warriors simultaneously, finally understood true fear. These humans did not just understand space warfare, they understood ground combat at a level that suggested centuries of practice. The Krell had evolved as hunters, but the humans had evolved as something more terrible. They were survivors who had learned to hunt the hunters. Retreat, the Hive Admiral commanded through the hive mind. All ships, full retreat. Now. For the first time in 300 years of conquest, the Krell Dominion fled from battle. Of the 500 ships that had surrounded the Indomitable, fewer than 200 were combat effective enough to execute the retreat order. The rest drifted as wreckage or limped away on damaged engines. On Valesia, Commander Celis watched in stunned silence as the Krell fleet broke and ran. Around her homeworld, the few surviving Valesian defense ships were receiving an urgent transmission from the human captain. Valesian forces, this is Captain Chen. We've driven them off, but they'll regroup eventually. I'm transmitting tactical data and defensive patterns. Use this time to evacuate your wounded and prepare better defenses. And someone please tell your people that Earth sends its regards. In the Galactic Council chambers, absolute silence reigned. 30 species watched the aftermath of the battle, trying to process what they had witnessed. One ship, one human ship against 500 Krell vessels. And the humans had won, not just survived. One Ambassador Tyros was the first to speak. We need to establish contact with Earth immediately. We need to know who these people are, where they came from, and he paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. We need to make very certain they are our friends and not our enemies. Because in the span of a single battle, the galaxy had learned a terrifying truth. There was a species out there that made the Krell Dominion look like amateurs. A species that had weaponized physics itself, that fought with creativity and brutality in equal measure, that could turn any environment into a killing field. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they had announced their presence with the sound of railguns. News of the Krell defeat spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every species with FTL communication capabilities knew that the impossible had happened. The Krell Dominion, the nightmare that had consumed 47 civilizations, had been beaten back by a single ship from an unknown species called humans. The Galactic Council's emergency session was the most crowded in recorded history. Representatives from species that had not attended council meetings in decades suddenly appeared, all wanting to know the same thing. Who were these humans, and what did they want? Captain Sarah Chen stood before the assembled council 3 days after the battle. She had cleaned up and wore her formal naval uniform, but there was still a tiredness in her eyes that spoke of combat and hard decisions. The Indomitable floated in orbit above the council station, a reminder to everyone present of what humanity could do. Captain Chen, began First Speaker Melora, a dignified alien with silver skin and 3 eyes. On behalf of the Galactic Council, we thank you for your intervention at Valesia. However, we have many questions. How did you find us? Why did you help? And most importantly, what does Earth want? Chen took a breath and began her testimony. Earth achieved practical FTL travel 8 months ago. We didn't announce ourselves because we wanted to understand the galactic situation first. For 60 years, we had been receiving and decoding broadcasts from nearby systems. We learned your languages. We studied your cultures. We listened to your history. She paused, her expression hardening. And we heard the screams. We intercepted distress calls from species being destroyed by the Krell. We watched recordings of the atrocities they committed. We read the Council's official responses, which usually amounted to thoughts, prayers, and precisely nothing useful. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Ambassador Tyros spoke up, his voice defensive. You do not understand the complexities of galactic politics. Military intervention requires consensus, resources, coordination across dozens of species. Excuses, Chen interrupted flatly. What you're describing is bureaucracy choosing comfort over action. The Krell have been conducting genocide for 3 centuries. And you've done nothing effective to stop them, because stopping them would be difficult and expensive and might fail. First Speaker Melora's expression remained neutral. You judge us harshly, Captain. But tell me, if Earth is so principled, why did you send only 1 ship? Why not a fleet if you care so much about stopping genocide? Chen smiled, though there was no humor in it. We sent the Indomitable as a test. We needed to understand how the Krell fought, what their capabilities were, whether our weapons and tactics would be effective. We intercepted Valesia's distress call and decided to intervene. Consider it a field exercise, a test? Counselor Vex leaned forward, her mechanical body whirring softly. You risked your ship and crew as a test? We're the military, Chen replied simply. Risk is what we do. And yes, it was a test, one we passed. Now we know we can fight the Krell effectively. Now we know your defensive doctrines are outdated. Now we know the galaxy needs help whether it wants to admit it or not. The council chamber erupted in multiple languages as representatives argued among themselves. Some were offended by Chen's bluntness. Others were hopeful. A few were clearly terrified. First Speaker Melora called for order. Captain Chen, your actions saved the Valesian people, and for that we are grateful. But you must understand our concern. Your species appears from nowhere with military technology we do not fully understand, defeats an enemy that has terrified us for centuries, and now stands before us making judgments about our policies. How do we know you are not simply a different kind of threat? It was a fair question, and Chen had expected it. You have to make a choice based on actions, not words. We could have demanded tribute from Malaysia for saving them. We didn't. We could have seized territory or resources. We haven't. We could have simply left after the battle. We stayed to help with reconstruction and share defensive tactics. She pulled up a holographic display showing the Indomitable's specifications. The council members leaned forward, studying the data with intense interest. Then Chen zoomed out, revealing a classification system. The Indomitable was listed as an escort carrier, one of the smallest capital ships in the Earth fleet. The silence in the chamber was absolute. That's right, Chen said quietly. The Indomitable is what we consider a medium-sized support vessel. It's not even in our top 20 largest warships. If you're wondering whether Earth could conquer the galaxy, the answer is probably yes. But we're not interested in conquest. We've spent the last 10,000 years conquering each other, and we're tired of it. We finally united as a species about 200 years ago, and we're still learning how to work together. She closed the display and faced the council directly. Earth wants to propose an alliance, not one based on fear or dominance, but on mutual defense. We'll share our military technology and tactical doctrine. In return, we want access to your scientific knowledge, your medicine, your culture. We want to trade, learn, and grow together. But there's one condition that's non-negotiable. And what is that? Asked First Speaker Melora. No more appeasement of aggressors, Chen stated firmly. No more sitting in comfortable chambers debating while civilizations burn. No more counting the cost of action while ignoring the cost of inaction. The Council needs to form a true defense coalition, with real military coordination and the will to use it. If you want our help against the Krell or any other threat, you need to be willing to fight alongside us. Ambassador Tyro stood, his scales shimmering with emotion. Many of us would welcome such an alliance, Captain. But you must understand, not all council species are warriors. Some of us are philosophers, scientists, artists. We are not built for war. Neither were the Valasians, Chen countered, but they fought anyway when they had no choice. I'm not asking you to become warriors. I'm asking you to support those who fight on your behalf, and to contribute to the defense of civilization in whatever way you can. The Krell understand only strength. Right now you show them weakness divided into 30 different flavors. The debate continued for hours. Some species pledged immediate support for the alliance. Others wanted to deliberate with their home governments. A few, isolated and far from Krell space, questioned whether any action was needed at all. As the council argued, something was happening in the depths of Krell space that would make their decision much easier. The Hive Admiral had returned to the Krell birthing worlds in disgrace. The shared consciousness of the Dominion vibrated with fury at the defeat. For 300 years they had been unstoppable. Now a single ship from a species they had never heard of had shattered that invincibility. The Krell Empress herself, ancient and massive in her bio-throne, demanded answers. Through the hive mind, she studied every detail of the battle. She analyzed human tactics, weapons, and capabilities. And she reached a conclusion that sent ripples of determination through billions of Krell warriors across dozens of systems. This human threat must be crushed immediately. Not just defeated, crushed, destroyed so completely that no trace remained. The Dominion would gather its full military might, thousands of ships from core territories that had not seen battle in decades. They would find Earth and burn it to ash. They would make an example that would terrify the galaxy into submission for another 300 years. The Krell began their mobilization. It would take months to gather their forces, but when they struck, it would be with overwhelming power. No single ship, no matter how advanced, could stand against their true might. They had learned from their mistake. They would never underestimate these humans again. Back at the council station, Captain Chen received an encrypted transmission from Earth Fleet Command. She read it quickly, then allowed herself a small smile. She interrupted the ongoing debate politely but firmly. First Speaker Council members, I've just received notification from Earth. I thought you should know that Earth has not been idle while waiting for your deliberations. 3 months ago, we dispatched the 3rd Fleet to this sector as a follow-up to the Indomitable's mission. She pulled up a new holographic display. It showed 20 battleships, each twice the size of the Indomitable, along with 40 cruisers, 60 destroyers, and a full complement of support vessels. Over 150 warships in total. They'll arrive in approximately 4 weeks, Chen continued. Their mission is to permanently resolve the Krell threat. We're not asking for your permission. We're offering you the chance to participate, to show the galaxy that civilization can defend itself when it chooses to act together. The council chamber erupted again, but this time the tone was different. Before, the debate had been whether to ally with humans. Now it was about how quickly they could prepare their own forces to join them. Because the galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented. Humanity wasn't just going to defend against the Krell. They were going to war, and when Earth sent its fleet to war, the galaxy would learn the difference between fighting for survival and fighting to win. 3 months later, the combined fleet assembled at the edge of Krell space. 20 human battleships floated in formation alongside 300 vessels from 14 council species. It was the largest military coalition the galaxy had seen in over 1,000 years. And it existed because humanity had proven that the Krell could be beaten. Admiral Marcus Stone commanded the human Third Fleet from the battleship USNS Thunderchild. He was 60 years old, gray-haired, and carried the weight of 2 colonial wars and a dozen smaller conflicts on his shoulders. He had volunteered for this mission the moment he heard about the Krell. Stone had spent his career fighting human threats. The chance to fight for something larger than Earth politics had appealed to him. Status report. Stone requested from his command chair. All human vessels ready and in position, reported his tactical officer. Council forces are still organizing into their assigned formations. The Saruans are having trouble with their navigation systems again. Stone allowed himself a small smile. Send them our nav data and have Lieutenant Park walk them through the synchronization. We need everyone on the same page before we jump. The past 3 months had been intensive. Human military advisors had spread across the council fleet, teaching combined arms doctrine, coordinated fire patterns, and modern tactical theory. It had been challenging. Many species had not fought a major war in centuries. Their ships were designed for exploration or light patrol duty, not sustained combat. But they were learning, and more importantly, they were trying. Counselor Vex, now serving as the Council's military liaison, appeared on the command screen. Admiral Stone, the Council forces report ready, though I must express concern about our chances. Krell intelligence indicates they have assembled over 3,000 ships in their core systems. We are still outnumbered 10 to 1. Noted, Stone replied calmly. But numbers aren't everything. The Krell are about to learn what humans call combined arms warfare. Your energy weapons will complement our kinetic systems perfectly. They're expecting us to fight the way they've always been fought. We're going to do something different. The fleet jumped to FTL, emerging in Krell space 3 hours later. The sight that greeted them was staggering. The Krell had gathered their full might around their primary birthing worlds. Bioships stretched across the void in impossible numbers, organized in defensive layers that would take hours to penetrate. The Krell Hive Empress watched the approaching fleet through thousands of eyes. She had prepared for this moment carefully. The humans would find no easy victories here. Every ship, every weapon, every warrior of the Dominion stood ready to defend their existence. This would be the battle that ended humanity's brief moment of galactic relevance. Admiral Stone studied the defensive formation and nodded in approval. They've learned from the indomitable fight. Good defensive depth, no clustering, clear firing lanes. They've prepared well. Sir, that's 3,000 ships, his tactical officer said nervously. Even with council support, this is going to be brutal. War is always brutal, Lieutenant. But we're not here to win pretty. We're here to win permanently. Stone opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Stone. Today we fight not just for Earth or for the Council, but for every species the Krell have destroyed. For 47 civilizations that no longer exist. For the billions of voices that were silenced. We carry their memory into battle. Make them proud. All vessels, execute Alpha 7 on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark. The combined fleet divided into 3 groups, each taking a different approach vector to the Krell defensive sphere. The Krell prepared to meet each thrust with overwhelming force, confident in their numerical superiority. Then the humans revealed the first surprise. The Council ships equipped with plasma cannons and particle beams opened fire at maximum range, their energy weapons reaching out across vast distances. The Krell shields activated, deflecting the incoming fire as expected. This was familiar warfare. This they understood. While the Krell focused on the energy attacks, the human battleships launched missile spreads that seemed suicidally wasteful. Hundreds of missiles, each on a ballistic trajectory, traveling at sublight speeds that would take minutes to reach their targets. The Krell tracking systems flagged them as low-priority threats. Missiles that slow could be intercepted easily. What the Krell didn't understand was that these weren't attack missiles. They were delivery systems for something far more dangerous: coordinated nuclear minefields. The missiles spread out across the battlefield and detonated simultaneously, creating overlapping zones of radiation, electromagnetic interference, and superheated plasma. The Krell shields, designed for direct fire, suddenly found themselves trying to protect against environmental hazards from all directions. Council forces, concentrate fire on grid sectors 7 through 12, Stone ordered. Hit them while their shields are cycling. The combined fleet poured fire into the weakened sections. Krell ships, suddenly vulnerable, began taking catastrophic damage. But they were not defenseless. 3,000 ships meant 3,000 weapons platforms, and the Krell began returning fire with devastating effect. The battle became a brutal slugging match. Human railguns punched through Krell hulls while bioplasma burned through Allied shields. Council energy weapons carved through enemy formations while acid missiles corroded human armor plating. Ships on both sides died by the dozens, then by the hundreds. Admiral Stone watched the casualty reports climb and forced himself to remain calm. This was the reality of large-scale warfare. Good people died, ships were lost. But giving in to grief or doubt would kill even more. He had to focus on winning, because winning was the only way to save the most lives in the long run. Deploy the Kasaba howitzer ships, he ordered. Target the Krell command cluster. 6 human cruisers broke formation and accelerated directly toward the heaviest concentration of Krell vessels. They were technically suicide ships, crewed by volunteers who knew they probably weren't coming back. Their hulls had been stripped down and filled with enhanced nuclear weapons designed for one purpose: to create focused beams of nuclear plasma that could cut through multiple ships in a single detonation. The Krell recognized the threat and concentrated fire on the approaching cruisers. 3 were destroyed before reaching their targets. The remaining 3 made it into optimal position before detonating their payloads simultaneously. The resulting nuclear lances carved through 17 Krell capital ships, including 3 command vessels. The Krell hive mind shuddered as thousands of shared consciousnesses went dark at once. For a brief moment, coordination faltered. Ships hesitated. Formations wavered. It was only 3 seconds of confusion, but 3 seconds was an eternity in modern combat. The combined fleet exploited the gap ruthlessly. Concentrated fire hammered into the disorganized Krell forces, destroying another 40 ships before they could recover. When the hive mind re-established control, the Krell had lost 20% of their forces and the battle had only been raging for 2 hours. The Hive Empress, feeling the deaths of her children through the shared consciousness, made a decision. She activated her personal bioship, a massive vessel the size of a small moon, and took direct command of the battle. Her presence stabilized the hive mind and reinvigorated the Krell warriors. They would not break. They would not retreat. They would fight to the last ship if necessary. For 6 more hours the battle raged. Space became a graveyard of wrecked ships and floating debris. Human casualties climbed into the thousands. Council vessels were lost by the dozens, but the Krell were losing faster. Their regenerative abilities, so effective in previous wars, were overwhelmed by the sheer destructive power being thrown at them. Then the Krell played their final card. They deployed a biological weapon, a virus engineered to target non-Krell life forms and spread rapidly through ship ventilation systems. It was a desperation move, but effective. Within minutes, several Council ships reported crew infections. Panic began spreading through the Allied fleet. Admiral Stone received the bioweapon reports and felt a cold fury settle over him. Using biological weapons was a line even Earth's worst wars had rarely crossed. The Krell had just made this personal. Deploy countermeasure packages, he ordered. Send the medical data to all Allied ships immediately. His medical officer looked confused. Sir, we need time to analyze the virus and develop a cure. That could take days. We don't need to develop a cure, Stone replied grimly. We already have one. You think Earth hasn't spent centuries preparing for biowarfare? We've cataloged and created countermeasures for thousands of potential biological agents. Nanomedical treatments, broad-spectrum antivirals, adaptive immune boosters. We learned this lesson the hard way in the biowars of 2087. Send everything we have to the infected ships. Within 30 minutes, The Krell bioweapon had been neutralized. The Allied crews recovered, the panic subsided, and the Krell's final advantage evaporated. They had nothing left but numbers, and those numbers were shrinking rapidly. The Hive Empress, watching her forces crumble, finally understood what Captain Chen had tried to tell the galaxy. Humans were not simply a warrior species. They were survivors who had weaponized their survival. Captain Miranda Chen stood in front of the military tribunal 3 years ago, watching her career burn to ashes. The accident wasn't her fault, but someone had to take the blame when 3 brand-new frigates collided during training exercises. She wore the shame like a heavy coat and accepted her discharge quietly. Now she taught basic tactics to young cadets at the Lunar Academy. It was honest work, but every morning she looked at the stars and remembered what it felt like to command a warship. That morning started like any other. Chen was explaining formation tactics to a class of 20 cadets when her communication device buzzed. The message was short and direct. Admiral Terrence Watts wanted to see her immediately at Earth Defense Command. 2 hours later, Chen sat in the Admiral's office, confused and suspicious. Watts was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. "Captain Chen," he began, then corrected himself. "Sorry, Professor Chen." "Just Chen is fine, sir," she replied. Watts pulled up a holographic display. A massive alien fleet appeared in the air between them. The ships were sleek and deadly, painted in the purple and gold colors of the Valorian Empire. 3 days ago, Emperor Zalthrak sent us an ultimatum, Watts explained. "We have 1 week to surrender all our outer colonies. Mars, Europa, Titan, all of them. If we refuse, his armada will destroy every human settlement in the solar system." Chen studied the display. She counted over 300 warships. Earth's entire defense fleet had only 50 vessels. "That's a massacre waiting to happen," she said quietly. "Yes," Watts agreed. "We can't win a direct fight. We need time to evacuate civilians from the colonies, at least 6 hours once the fighting starts." "You want a sacrifice," Chen understood. "A ship to slow them down while people escape." Watts nodded slowly. "I need someone desperate or crazy enough to take a ship that barely works and face an entire armada." He changed the holographic display. A new ship appeared. It was enormous, twice the size of Earth's current battleships. The design looked strange, covered in unusual angles and weapon systems Chen didn't recognize. "This is the UNS Prometheus," Watts said, "a prototype warship from 22 years ago. The project was canceled because nothing worked right. Too expensive, too complicated, too ambitious." Chen walked around the hologram, studying every detail. "Where is it now?" "Mothballed at Titan Station. We keep it in orbit like a museum piece to remind engineers not to waste money." "And you want me to take this broken ship against 300 Valorian warships?" "I want you to buy us 6 hours," Watts corrected. "After that, you're authorized to surrender or retreat. We just need time." Chen was quiet for a long moment. This was a suicide mission dressed up in military language. "Everyone knew it. Why me?" she asked. "Because you're the best tactical mind we have and because you have nothing left to lose," Watts said honestly. "I won't order you to do this. I'm asking." Chen looked at the hologram of the Prometheus again. Something about the ship called to her. Maybe it was 2 failures meeting each other. Maybe it was a chance to die doing something meaningful instead of teaching from dusty textbooks. "I'll need a crew," she said. "I've got 200 volunteers. Misfits mostly. People who got second chances like you. When do we leave?" "The Valorian fleet enters our solar system in 4 days. You'll have 3 days to get the Prometheus operational." Chen saluted. "Then I should get started, sir." The journey to Titan Station took 8 hours. Chen used the time to read everything about the Prometheus. The files were marked with failure reports and cost overruns. The ship's designer was Dr. Sarah Kimura, a brilliant engineer who disappeared after the project was shut down. The more Chen read, the more confused she became. The systems weren't broken. They were just different. The quantum drive operated on principles that other ships didn't use. The weapons were experimental. The shields worked in strange ways. It was like Kimura had built a warship from the future and tried to make it work with current technology. When Chen arrived at Titan Station, her new crew was already there. Commander James Okoye was her chief engineer, a tall man from Nigeria who smiled despite the terrible situation. He had served with Chen before the accident and volunteered immediately when he heard she was coming back. Good to see you. Captain, Okoye said warmly. Good to see you too. James, think you can make this ancient beast work? Okoye looked at the Prometheus through the station window. The ship floated in the darkness, covered in dust and neglect. I've worked on worse, barely. The crew boarded the ship together. Inside, everything was dark and cold. Emergency lights flickered on as they moved through the corridors. The ship smelled like old metal and abandonment. Chen made her way to the bridge. It was larger than modern ships, with stations she didn't recognize. At the center was the captain's chair, and above it a neural interface helmet hung from mechanical arms. What is that? She asked. Okoye studied the equipment. Neural link system. The captain's brain connects directly to the ship's computer. It was banned by the Galactic Council 15 years ago. They said it gave human ships an unfair advantage. Because it works? Because it works too well. Over the next 3 days, the crew brought the Prometheus back to life. It wasn't easy. Half the systems refused to activate. The other half activated but did things they weren't supposed to do. The quantum drive hummed with energy that made scientists nervous. The weapon systems powered up but wouldn't calibrate properly. On the third night, Chen sat alone on the bridge. Tomorrow the Valorian fleet would arrive. Tomorrow she would take this broken ship and its crew of 200 people into a battle they couldn't win. She reached up and pulled down the neural interface helmet. The moment it touched her head, everything changed. A voice spoke in her mind. Female, calm, curious. Hello, Captain. I've been waiting for you, Chen gasped. Who are you? I am the Cascade System AI. The crew has been calling me Cassie. I've been dormant for 22 years, but I've been listening, learning, watching, waiting for someone brave enough to fly me again. The ship has an AI? I am not just an AI, Captain. I am the Prometheus, and together, we're going to show the Valorian Empire what happens when they underestimate Earth. Chen felt the ship around her, every system, every weapon, every circuit. It was overwhelming and beautiful. They forgot about you, Chen whispered to the ship. Yes, Cassie agreed. Let's remind them why they should have been afraid. The next morning, the Valorian Armada arrived at the edge of the solar system. 300 warships in perfect formation, ready to crush humanity. The Prometheus launched from Titan Station, alone against impossible odds. On the bridge, Chen settled into the captain's chair and placed the neural helmet on her head. The connection flooded her senses. She wasn't just commanding the ship anymore. She was the ship. All hands battle stations, she ordered. Let's buy our people 6 hours. The ancient warship accelerated toward the Armada. Its engines burned bright in the darkness. Aboard the flagship, Valorian War Master Krevzon watched the approaching vessel and laughed. One ship? He said in disbelief. These humans send one ancient ship against our entire fleet? His tactical officer studied the readings. War Master, that vessel is emitting unusual energy signatures. Should we be concerned? Krevzon waved dismissively. Destroy it. I want this insult removed from my view. He had no idea what was coming. The Prometheus moved through space like a predator stalking prey. On the bridge, Captain Chen felt every system through the neural link. It was strange and wonderful. She could sense the quantum drive humming deep in the ship's core. She felt the weapons charging. She knew exactly how much power flowed through every circuit. Commander Okoye worked at the engineering station, his fingers flying across the controls. Captain, the quantum drive is operating at levels that should be impossible. According to every physics model we have, this thing shouldn't work. But it does work, Chen said. Through Cassie's sensors, she could see the Valorian Armada clearly now. 300 ships arranged in a battle formation that looked like a blooming flower. Beautiful and deadly. It works because Dr. Kimura designed it to break the rules, Cassie's voice explained in Chen's mind. She understood that the Galactic Council's technology had stagnated. Everyone copied each other. She started from scratch. Lieutenant Sarah Park, the weapons officer, looked up from her station. Captain, I'm reading the weapon systems and I don't understand half of them. These graviton pulse cannons, what do they do? Chen accessed Cassie's database through the neural link. Information flooded her mind. They don't just punch through shields. They make shields irrelevant. The graviton pulse exists partially in another dimension. Park's eyes widened. That's insane. That's why the project was cancelled, Okoye added. The Galactic Council has strict rules about dimensional weapons. They banned them 300 years ago after the Dimension Wars nearly destroyed half the galaxy. We're not in Galactic Council space, Chen said quietly. We're defending our home, and I'll use every advantage we have. The communication system crackled to life. War Master Krevzon's face appeared on the main screen. He was tall and reptilian, with scales that shimmered purple and gold. His eyes were cold and full of contempt. Human vessel, you are ordered to power down your weapons and surrender immediately. The Valorian Empire has claimed this system. Resistance is futile and will result in your destruction. Chen stood from her chair. Even though Krevzon couldn't see her through the visual link, she wanted to face him as an equal. War Master, this is Captain Miranda Chen of the UNS Prometheus. This system belongs to Earth. Leave now and we'll let you go home with your ships intact. Krevzon laughed. It was a harsh grating sound. You have one ship, one ancient primitive vessel. I have 300 of the finest warships in the galaxy. You cannot win. Maybe, Chen admitted, but we can make you regret coming here. The Valorian commander's face darkened with anger. Destroy them. A single Valorian destroyer broke formation and accelerated toward the Prometheus. It was sleek and fast, covered in weapon ports. Compared to the old Earth ship, it looked like a race car next to a cargo truck. Incoming fire, Park announced. Plasma batteries locked on us. Don't evade, Chen ordered. Through the neural link, she felt Cassie's agreement. They had to test the shields. The crew tensed as bright blue plasma bolts screamed toward them. The weapons hit the Prometheus head-on. The ship shuddered, but the shields held. More than held. The energy from the plasma didn't dissipate. It was absorbed. Okoye stared at his readings in shock. The shields are feeding the weapons. The shield system is converting incoming fire into power for our offensive systems. Chen smiled. Dr. Kimura had been a genius. Return fire. All graviton pulse cannons. Park's hands moved across her controls. The Prometheus lit up with weapons fire. Beams of twisted spacetime shot from the ship's cannons. They didn't look like normal weapons. They looked like reality itself was tearing apart. The graviton pulses hit the Valorian destroyer. Its shields activated, the standard defense that had protected Valorian ships for centuries. But the graviton pulses passed through the shields like they weren't there. The beams struck the hull directly. The destroyer exploded. One moment it was a sleek warship. The next moment it was expanding debris and fire. On the Valorian flagship, alarms started blaring. Officers shouted in confusion. Krevzon stared at the tactical display in disbelief. What just happened? He demanded. The human ship's weapons bypassed our shields completely, his tactical officer reported. I've never seen anything like it. Krevzon's pride was wounded. No primitive human ship should be able to destroy a Valorian vessel so easily. Send 20 ships. Surround them. Concentrate fire. I want that vessel turned into dust. 20 Valorian warships moved in formation, creating a sphere around the Prometheus. They opened fire from all directions. Hundreds of plasma bolts and missile strikes converged on the Earth ship. Multiple incoming, Park called out. We can't dodge them all. We don't need to dodge, Chen said. Through Cassie, she could feel every incoming weapon. The neural link let her process information faster than normal humans could think. Activate the adaptive plasma network. Another of Dr. Kimura's experimental systems came online. Weapons ports all over the Prometheus opened simultaneously. Plasma turrets that could fire in any direction, controlled by Cassie's combat AI, created a sphere of defensive fire. The Valorian weapons met a wall of Earth plasma. Explosions filled the space around the Prometheus. The few shots that got through were absorbed by the shields, feeding more power to the ship's weapons. Quantum drive. Micro-jump protocol, Chen ordered. Captain, that's not in any manual, Okoye protested. It's in Cassie's memory. Trust me. The quantum drive pulsed. Space itself bent around the Prometheus. The ship disappeared from the center of the Valorian formation and reappeared behind 3 enemy vessels. The transition took less than a second. The Valorian captains had no time to react. The Prometheus fired at point-blank range. 3 more ships exploded. Micro-jump again, Chen commanded. The Prometheus vanished and reappeared on the other side of the formation. 2 more ships destroyed. The quantum drive was using short-range teleportation, something that should have been impossible with conventional technology. The Valorian ships tried to track the Prometheus, but it was too fast. Every few seconds it would disappear and reappear somewhere else. Every time it appeared, more ships died. Through the neural link, Chen could feel Cassie learning. The AI was analyzing every enemy movement, predicting their tactics, adapting the combat strategy in real time. They weren't just fighting, they were hunting. 18 minutes after the engagement began, all 20 Valorian ships were destroyed. The Prometheus floated among the debris, its hull barely scratched. On the bridge, the crew sat in stunned silence. They had just destroyed 20 warships without losing a single person. "Captain," Park said quietly, "the AI is predicting enemy movements before they make them." Chen nodded. Cassie's not just reacting. She's reading their tactical patterns. She's learning their culture's approach to warfare and using it against them. Okoye pulled up a new file on his console. "Captain, I found something. Dr. Kimura left encrypted files throughout the ship's systems. This one just unlocked based on our combat performance." "What does it say?" "It's a message. She says the Prometheus was never meant to be just a ship. It was meant to be a partnership between human intuition and artificial intelligence. Together, they become something greater than either could be alone." Chen felt Cassie's presence in her mind. The AI wasn't just a tool. She was a crew member, a friend, a partner in this impossible fight. On the Valorian flagship, Emperor Zalthrak himself appeared on Krevzon's communication screen. The Emperor's face was twisted with fury. "War Master, you told me the humans were primitive. You said this would be easy conquest." Krevzon bowed his head. "My Emperor, I don't understand. Their technology shouldn't be this advanced. I don't care about your excuses. You have 280 ships remaining. Use them. Crush this human vessel. Show the galaxy that the Valorian Empire does not tolerate defiance." "Yes, my Emperor." Krevzon turned to his fleet commanders. "All ships attack Formation Delta. We move as one. No more small engagements. We overwhelm them with numbers." 280 warships began advancing toward the Prometheus. Chen checked the chronometer. 30 minutes had passed since the battle began. She needed 5.5 more hours. "All crew, this is the captain," she announced over the ship-wide communication. "We just proved we can hurt them. Now we prove we can survive them. Hold the line. Give our people time to escape." The Prometheus was forgotten and abandoned, but today we remind the galaxy what Earth can do. The crew responded with determination. They were scared but ready. Cassie's voice was calm in Chen's mind. "Ready when you are, Captain. Then let's give them a fight they'll never forget." 280 Valorian warships moved in perfect coordination. They formed a massive wall of metal and weapons that stretched across space. On the Prometheus bridge, every alarm was screaming. The tactical display showed so many incoming ships that the screen turned almost completely red. "They're not playing around anymore," Commander Okoye said, his voice tight with tension. Captain Chen felt Cassie analyzing the formation through their neural link. The AI processed millions of tactical calculations per second. They're using a hammer formation. No subtlety, just overwhelming force from one direction. "Can we handle it?" Lieutenant Park asked from weapons. "We're about to find out," Chen replied. The Valorian fleet opened fire. The space between them and the Prometheus filled with thousands of plasma bolts and missiles. It looked like a wall of light rushing toward them. "All power to forward shields," Chen ordered. "Cassie, prepare counterfire pattern Omega." The shields lit up as the Valorian weapons struck home. The Prometheus shook violently. Conduits exploded on the bridge. Sparks rained down from damaged panels. The ship groaned under the assault. "Shield strength at 60%, Okoye called out over the noise. "We can't take much more of this." Through the neural link, Chen felt every hit. It was like being punched 1,000 times. But she also felt something else. The shields were absorbing massive amounts of energy, and that energy was feeding into the weapon systems. All weapons, full spread fire, target their formation center. The Prometheus unleashed everything. Graviton pulse cannons, plasma turrets, missile batteries. The counterfire was so intense it created a burning line across space. The beams hit the center of the Valorian formation. Ships exploded. The hammer formation broke apart as vessels tried to evade, but they were packed too tightly together. When one ship exploded, debris damaged the ships around it. The chain reaction destroyed 15 ships in seconds. "Quantum drive. Micro jump 3,000 kilometers starboard," Chen ordered. The Prometheus vanished from the Valorian firing solution and reappeared on their flank. Now the Earthship was shooting at the side of their formation where shields were weaker. More Valorian ships died. 23, 28, 35. But there were too many of them. The Valorian fleet adjusted quickly. They spread out and surrounded the Prometheus from multiple directions. Chen could micro-jump away, but they would just follow. She needed to hurt them badly enough to make them hesitate. "Cassie, what's our status?" Chen asked through the neural link. "Hull integrity at 78%. Multiple breaches on lower decks. 23 casualties. Weapon systems at full capacity. Shields recharging. Can we do another alpha strike?" "Yes, but it will drain our reserves. We won't have enough power for more than 2 more micro-jumps." Chen made the decision instantly. Target their flagship. All weapons. Full power. The entire crew turned to look at her. The Valorian flagship, the Eternal Dominion, was 3 times the size of the Prometheus. It was surrounded by 50 escort vessels. Attacking it directly was insane. "Captain?" Park questioned. "We cut off the head. Do it now." Every weapon on the Prometheus fired at once. The graviton pulse cannons operating at maximum power tore through space itself. The beams crossed thousands of kilometers in seconds and struck the Eternal Dominion. The flagship's shields held for almost 3 seconds. Then they collapsed. The graviton pulses struck the hull, carving massive wounds in the armor. Secondary explosions rippled across the ship. The Eternal Dominion didn't explode, but it was crippled. It began spinning out of control, smoke and atmosphere pouring from the breaches. War Master Krevzon was thrown from his command chair. Alarms shrieked throughout the bridge. Half his crew was dead or dying. His beautiful flagship, the pride of the Valorian fleet, was dying around him. "All ships protect the flagship," he screamed into the communication system. The Valorian fleet broke formation to shield their wounded command ship. In that moment of chaos, Chen saw her opportunity. Micro-jump. Get us out of their firing range. Proceed to coordinates Delta 7. The Prometheus vanished and reappeared near Mars orbit. The crew took a moment to breathe. Damage control teams worked frantically to seal hull breaches and repair critical systems. Chen disconnected from the neural link for a moment. Her head pounded from the strain. Blood trickled from her nose. The link was pushing her human brain to its limits, so Koya noticed. "Captain, you need medical attention." Later. "How bad is the damage?" "Decks 7 through 12 have hull breaches. We've lost life support in those sections. The quantum drive is overheating. Shields are at 40% and recharging slowly, and we've got fires on Deck 9. Casualties?" Okoye's face was grim. 47 dead. 89 wounded. Chen felt each death like a physical blow. 47 people who trusted her. 47 families who would receive terrible news. But she couldn't afford to grieve yet. Not while they were still fighting. "How much time have we bought?" she asked. Park checked the chronometer. 2 hours 15 minutes since engagement began. "We need 3 hours and 45 minutes more." Chen wanted to laugh at the impossibility of it. They had fought brilliantly and destroyed 55 enemy ships. But there were still 225 Valorian warships left. The Prometheus was damaged and her crew was exhausted. Through the viewport, Chen could see the Valorian fleet regrouping. They were more cautious now, maintaining better spacing between ships. They had learned from their mistakes. "Captain, I'm getting a communication request from Admiral Watts." The communication officer reported. "Put him through." Admiral Watts appeared on the screen. He looked shocked. "Captain Chen, we're monitoring the battle from Earth Command. What you're doing is impossible. Just buying time like you asked, sir. You've destroyed nearly a fifth of their fleet with one ship. The Galactic Council is watching. The entire galaxy is watching. Every species that the Valorian Empire has threatened is seeing this. That's nice, sir, but I still need to hold them off for almost 4 more hours." Watts nodded slowly. "The evacuation ships are moving as fast as they can. Every minute you buy saves thousands of lives. Earth won't forget what you're doing. Just make sure those families get somewhere safe, sir. That's all that matters." The transmission ended. Chen reconnected to the neural link. Cassie's presence flooded her mind again. "They're coming back," Cassie warned. "And they're angry." The Valorian fleet advanced again, but differently this time. They moved in small groups covering each other. They wouldn't give Chen another chance to destroy large numbers at once. "Clever," Chen admitted. "They're adapting." "So will we," Cassie responded. The battle resumed. This time it was a grinding, brutal fight. The Prometheus would micro-jump to a position, destroy 2 or 3 ships, then jump away before the Valorian counterfire could overwhelm the shields. Jump, shoot, jump again. Over and over, minutes became an hour. 1 hour became 2. The Prometheus kept fighting, but the damage was accumulating. More hull breaches, more fires, more dead and wounded. Chen felt herself fading. The neural link was burning out her brain. Her vision blurred. Blood ran freely from her nose now. But she couldn't stop. Not yet. Captain, the quantum drive is approaching critical temperature, Okoye reported. We need to shut it down or it will melt down. How long can it run? Maybe 30 minutes. Maybe less. Chen checked the chronometer through vision that kept doubling. 4 hours and 48 minutes since the battle began. They only needed 72 more minutes. Keep it running, she ordered. Captain, if it melts down, we'll be stranded. No quantum drive means no jumping. We'll be a sitting target. If we stop jumping now, we're dead anyway. Keep it running. The Prometheus continued its deadly dance. Jump, fire, jump again. The Valorian ships were getting better at predicting the jumps, but Cassie was getting better at predicting their predictions. It was a battle of minds as much as weapons. Then Okoye found it. Hidden in Dr. Kimura's encrypted files, unlocked by combat data. The Cascade Protocol. Captain, you need to see this, he said urgently. Chen pulled part of her attention from the battle. What is it? A weapon system I've never seen before. It weaponizes the quantum drive itself. Creates a cascading dimensional shockwave that will knock out every enemy ship's shields and weapons in a 500,000-kilometer radius. Chen felt hope surge through her exhaustion. That would cripple most of their fleet. Yes, but Captain, there's a cost. The quantum drive will burn out completely. We'll be stranded, and there's a 60% chance the feedback will destroy the Prometheus entirely. Will it buy us the time we need? Okoye was quiet for a moment. Yes, if it works, the evacuation ships will be safe. Chen looked at her crew. They were bloody and exhausted. They had fought impossibly hard. Now she was asking them to make one more sacrifice. Crew of the Prometheus, she announced over the ship-wide system. I'm going to activate a weapon that will save the evacuation fleet. But it will strand us here. We won't be able to run. Some of us might not survive. Anyone who wants to use the escape pods has 60 seconds. Oh, judgment, she waited. 60 seconds passed. Nobody left. Guess we're all crazy together, Okoye said with a tired smile. Cassie, Chen said through the neural link. Are you ready for this? The AI's response was immediate and certain. I was built for this moment, Captain. Let's finish it. Chen took a deep breath. All hands brace. The moment Captain Chen activated the Cascade Protocol, every system on the Prometheus began screaming warnings. The quantum drive's temperature shot up past critical levels. Energy readings went off every scale. The ship itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained power. Energy buildup detected, Commander Okoye called out, struggling to read the instruments through the shaking. It's climbing fast. Too fast. Through the neural link, Chen felt the quantum drive transforming. Dr. Kimura's final gift was unleashing itself. The drive wasn't just bending space anymore. It was creating cracks in the fabric of reality itself. Cracks that would spread like a wave across the battlefield. On the Valorian flagship, sensors began shrieking. The crippled Eternal Dominion had managed to restore partial power, and War Master Krevzon was back in command. His tactical officer stared at the readings with growing terror. War Master, the human ship is generating massive energy levels. It's unlike anything in our database. Krevzon watched the Prometheus on his display. The old Earth warship was glowing now, surrounded by an expanding field of twisted space. What are they doing? Unknown, sir. But the energy signature suggests a dimensional weapon, a big one. For the first time since the battle began, Krevzon felt real fear. All ships, scatter. Emergency dispersal pattern, move now. But the Valorian fleet was too close and the cascade was already happening. The quantum drive reached critical mass. Chen felt it through the neural link like a dam breaking in her mind. Cassie's voice was calm despite the chaos. Releasing in 3, 2, 1, the Prometheus exploded with light. Not fire, not plasma, but pure quantum energy that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The wave burst outward at impossible speed, a ripple in reality itself that spread across the battlefield. The wave hit the nearest Valorian ships first. Their shields flickered and died instantly. Weapon systems overloaded in cascading failures. Engine cores went critical as their containment fields collapsed. Ship after ship went dark as every advanced system shut down simultaneously. The cascade spread wider. 50 ships crippled. 100. 150. The wave kept expanding. touching every Valorian vessel within 500,000 kilometers. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, the lights died. Emergency power failed. Life support cut out. Krevzan and his crew were suddenly floating in zero gravity as the artificial gravity systems failed. "Report," Krevzan demanded, his voice echoing in the darkness. "All systems offline, War Master. Shields gone. Weapons gone. We're dead in space." Across the battlefield, 180 Valorian warships were reduced to floating metal coffins. Some had enough emergency power to keep life support running. Others didn't. The most damaged ships began to explode as their unstable cores finally gave out. On the Prometheus, the lights went out. Chen felt the neural links sever as the ship's main power died. The sudden disconnection felt like losing a limb. She gasped and slumped in her chair, blood streaming from her nose and ears. "Captain?" Lieutenant Park rushed to her side. "I'm okay," Chen lied, wiping blood from her face. "Status report." Okoye worked at his console using emergency power. "Quantum drive is completely destroyed. Main power is down. We're running on backup batteries only. Shields are offline. Weapons are offline. But life support is holding, so we're a floating brick," Chen summarized. "A floating brick that just crippled most of an Empire's fleet," Okoye corrected with a grim smile. Park checked her tactical display, also running on backup power. "I'm counting 119 Valorian ships still operational. They're damaged but functional. They're regrouping on the far side of the engagement zone. 119 ships, still enough to destroy the Prometheus 10 times over." But Chen checked the chronometer. 5 hours and 37 minutes since the battle began. The evacuation ships only needed 23 more minutes. "We bought them time," Chen said. "Now we just have to survive long enough to see if it matters." Okoye was already organizing repair teams. "We might be able to restore minimal maneuvering power, maybe some forward shields. But we're not jumping anywhere, and we're definitely not fighting. Do what you can." The crew worked frantically. In engineering, teams bypassed blown conduits and rerouted power from non-essential systems. On the weapons deck, Park tried to restore at least a few turrets. Throughout the ship, damage control parties sealed breaches and fought fires. 30 minutes later, Okoye had partial power restored to the engines and forward shields. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. The Valorian fleet was moving again. The 119 ships that still functioned formed a loose attack formation. They advanced slowly, cautiously. The Prometheus had surprised them twice. They wouldn't let it happen again. War Master Krevzan was aboard one of the undamaged destroyers now, having been rescued from the crippled Eternal Dominion. His beautiful flagship was gone. Half his fleet was gone. Hundreds of his warriors were dead, all because of one ancient human warship. "All ships converge on the Prometheus," he ordered. "I want that vessel reduced to atoms. Slowly. Make them suffer." But before the Valorian ships could close to firing range, new contacts appeared on the sensors. Lieutenant Park's voice was confused. "Captain, I'm reading multiple quantum signatures." "A lot of them." Chen felt a surge of hope. "Identify them. It's Earth's fleet. All 50 ships. They're coming out of quantum jump right on top of us." The space around the Prometheus filled with friendly vessels. Cruisers, destroyers, frigates. The entire Earth Defense Force had arrived. They moved into defensive formation around the damaged Prometheus, shields up and weapons charged. Admiral Watts appeared on the communication screen. Behind him, Chen could see his flagship's bridge crew working efficiently. "Captain Chen, the evacuation is complete. Every civilian is safely away. We're here to bring you home." Chen wanted to cry but was too tired. "Glad to see you, sir." "The pleasure is mine, Captain. You and your crew just became legends." The Valorian fleet stopped their advance. 119 ships versus 50. The Valorians still had the numerical advantage, but their momentum was broken. They had come to this system confident and arrogant. Now they were hurt and uncertain. Krevzan stared at the tactical display. He could still win this fight. The Earthships were modern but smaller than Valorian vessels. With concentrated fire, he could destroy them and complete his mission. But then more contacts appeared on the sensors. Ships from the Galactic Council were arriving. The Thalnori with their elegant silver vessels, the Koresh with their aggressive battle cruisers, the Solarian Commonwealth with their massive dreadnoughts, dozens of ships from a dozen different species. They weren't coming to fight. They were coming to witness. Krevzan's tactical officer looked at him. "War Master, we're receiving a transmission from Emperor Zalthrak himself." The Emperor's face appeared on the screen. His expression was cold and controlled, but Krevzon could see the fury in his eyes. War Master, what is your status? Krevzon hated admitting failure. We have lost 181 ships, my Emperor. Our flagship is destroyed. The human vessel proved to be far more capable than anticipated. I can see that. The entire galaxy can see that. The Emperor's voice was bitter. Every species we've threatened, every world we've conquered, they're all watching right now. They're watching the mighty Valorian Empire struggle against one primitive human warship. We can still defeat them, my Emperor. Give me the order and I will destroy every Earthship in this system. And create more human martyrs? Give them more heroes to rally around? The Emperor shook his head. No, the political cost is too high. Withdraw the fleet. Krevzon couldn't believe it. My Emperor, we cannot simply retreat. Our honor is already damaged, War Master. Continuing this attack while the galaxy watches will make it worse. We came to conquer an easy target. Instead, we found a hornet's nest. We withdraw now and plan our revenge carefully. The transmission ended. Krevzon wanted to scream, to rage, to do anything but accept this humiliation. But orders were orders. All ships prepare to jump to hyperspace. We're leaving. One of his junior officers spoke up hesitantly. War Master, shouldn't we send a message to the humans? Some kind of threat or ultimatum? Krevzon considered it. Then he opened a channel to the Prometheus. Captain Chen's face appeared on his screen. She looked terrible. Blood on her face, eyes red from burst vessels, skin pale from exhaustion. But she met his gaze steadily. This isn't over, human, Krevzon said. Chen smiled, and it wasn't friendly. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. You taught the galaxy that Earth can't be conquered. You showed them that we can fight back. We'll never forget that lesson. And neither will you. Krevzon cut the transmission. He gave the order, and the remaining Valorian ships jumped away, leaving their dead floating in space. On the Prometheus, the crew erupted in cheers. They had done it. Impossible odds, a broken ship, and they had won. Chen sat in her captain's chair, barely able to move from exhaustion. Commander Okoye approached with a medical team. Captain, you need immediate treatment. The neural link did serious damage. In a minute, Chen said. She needed to see this. Needed. 3 months after the battle, Captain Miranda Chen stood in front of a mirror in her quarters, adjusting her dress uniform. The reflection showed a woman who had aged years in a single day. There were new lines around her eyes. Her hair had streaks of gray that weren't there before. The neural link had left its mark, but she was alive. Her crew was alive. Earth was safe. Today was the memorial service for the 47 crew members who died aboard the Prometheus. Chen had written personal letters to each family. It was the hardest thing she had ever done, harder than facing the Valorian Armada. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she called. Commander James Okoye entered, also in dress uniform. He looked tired but proud. Ready for today? No, Chen admitted. But we do it anyway. They walked together through the corridors of Titan Station. The Prometheus was docked here undergoing complete reconstruction. The old warship had been stripped down to its frame. Engineers swarmed over every section, rebuilding and upgrading. Chen paused at a viewport to look at her ship. It no longer looked forgotten or abandoned. The Prometheus was surrounded by construction platforms and supply vessels. It looked like what it was, the most important warship in Earth's fleet. Hard to believe it's the same ship, Okoye said. It's not really, Chen replied. None of us are the same as we were 3 months ago. The memorial service was held in the main hangar bay. Thousands of people attended. Military personnel, government officials, families of the fallen, and civilians who wanted to honor the heroes who saved them. Chen gave a speech. She talked about courage and sacrifice. She talked about each of the 47 crew members who died. She made sure everyone knew their names, their stories, their dreams. They weren't just numbers in a casualty report. They were people who gave everything to protect their home. When the ceremony ended, Chen needed some time alone. She made her way to the Prometheus, using her captain's access codes to board the ship despite the ongoing construction. The bridge was a mess of exposed wiring and missing panels, but the captain's chair was still there. Chen sat down and closed her eyes. Hello, Captain. Chen's eyes snapped open, Cassie's voice coming from a small speaker that was still functional. Cassie? I thought you were offline. Most of me is, the AI admitted. But Dr. Kimura built redundant systems throughout the ship. Small pieces of me survived in isolated circuits. I've been watching the reconstruction. How much of you is left? Enough. The engineers are building new quantum cores to replace what was destroyed. When they bring me fully online again, I'll be complete. Different but complete, Chen smiled. I'm glad. I was worried we lost you. You can't get rid of me that easily, Captain. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Cassie spoke again. I've been listening to the engineers. They're building 17 more ships based on my design. The Prometheus-class warship is going into full production. Earth learned its lesson, Chen said. We can't rely on being overlooked anymore. We need to be strong. Will you command the new fleet? They offered me a promotion. Admiral, commander of the Prometheus fleet. But you haven't accepted yet. No. Part of me just wants to go back to teaching. To live a quiet life after everything we've been through. Cassie was quiet for a moment, processing. What does your gut tell you? Chen thought about it. She thought about the families they saved. The colonies that still existed because one ship and 200 people refused to give up. She thought about the Valorian Empire. Still out there. Still dangerous. My gut tells me the job isn't finished, Chen finally said. The Valorians will come back eventually. When they do, Earth needs to be ready, and I need to make sure the new crews learn what we learned. That being human means fighting for each other. That technology is just tools. The real weapon is the spirit of people who refuse to surrender. Then you have your answer, Cassie said simply. A noise from the doorway made Chen turn. A woman stood there, elderly but with sharp eyes. She wore civilian clothes but carried herself with military bearing. Dr. Kimura? Chen stood up in shock. Sarah Kimura smiled. Hello, Captain Chen. I've been wanting to meet you. But you disappeared. Everyone thought you were dead. I went away, Kimura corrected, walking onto the bridge. After they canceled the Prometheus project, I was angry. I knew they were wrong. I knew humanity would need this ship someday. So I went to a remote research station and waited. I monitored all space traffic, watching for the day when Earth faced a real threat. You were waiting for 22 years? I built the Prometheus to be patient. I could be patient too. Kimura looked around the damaged bridge with affection. I see she performed well. She saved us all, Chen said. Your design was brilliant. Kimura shook her head. The design was just engineering. You and your crew brought her to life. You trusted her when everyone else had given up. That's what made the difference. Will you help with the reconstruction? Chen asked. We're building more ships like her, but we need your expertise. That's why I'm here, Kimura confirmed. Earth needs a real fleet now, and I'm going to make sure each ship is even better than the Prometheus. Over the next few weeks, Chen made her decision. She accepted the promotion to Admiral. She would command the new Prometheus fleet when it was ready. But first, she had to finish one more mission. Admiral Terrence Watts called her to Earth Defense Command. When she arrived, she found the conference room full of representatives from the Galactic Council. The Thalnori ambassador spoke first. Captain Chen, the Council has been reviewing the battle recordings. Your tactics and technology have caused quite a stir. We were just defending our home, Chen replied carefully. A Koresh commander leaned forward. Your weapons systems violate several Galactic Council treaties, specifically the ban on dimensional weapons and neural interface systems. Chen felt her temper rise. Those treaties were written by species who already had superior technology. They were designed to keep newer species weak. Perhaps, the Thalnori ambassador admitted, but they exist for good reasons. The Dimension Wars 300 years ago nearly destroyed this entire sector. And if we had followed your rules, Earth would be a Valorian colony right now. Chen shot back. We used what we had to survive. There was uncomfortable silence around the table. Finally, the Solarian Commonwealth representative spoke. She was tall and elegant with silver skin and wise eyes. The Council is not here to punish Earth, she said calmly. We're here to acknowledge that the old rules don't work anymore. The Valorian Empire has grown too powerful. They ignore the treaties whenever it suits them. Perhaps it's time for the Council to remember that strength comes from innovation, not from stagnation. The Thalnori ambassador nodded slowly. The Council proposes a new treaty. Earth will share its technology with allied species. In return, we offer full membership in the Council and mutual defense agreements. Admiral Watts, sitting beside Chen, smiled. That's a generous offer. It's a necessary offer, the Koresh commander said bluntly. The Valorians were humiliated. They will return eventually. When they do, it won't be with 300 ships. It will be with 3,000. Earth alone cannot stand against that. But Earth and the Council together, that's a different story, Chen understood. The Battle of the Prometheus had changed the political landscape. The smaller species in the galaxy had hope now. They had seen that the Empire could be beaten. They wanted Earth as an ally. We'll need time to consider this, Watts said diplomatically. Of course, but don't take too long. The galaxy is watching to see what Earth does next. After the meeting ended, Chen and Watts stood alone in the conference room. What do you think? Watts asked. I think we just became very important very quickly, Chen replied, and that can be as dangerous as being overlooked. True, but better to be respected and feared than dismissed and conquered. Chen couldn't argue with that. 6 months after the battle, the Prometheus was complete. The reconstruction had transformed the ship while keeping its essential character. The new quantum drive was even more powerful than the original. The weapon systems had been refined and upgraded. The neural interface had been improved to be safer for human operators. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge, wearing her new uniform with its admiral's insignia. Her crew, promoted and decorated, stood at their stations. Commander Okoye was now Captain Okoye, her second in command. Lieutenant Park was now Commander Park, Chief Tactical Officer, and Cassie was back. Her consciousness fully restored and spread throughout the ship's new systems. Welcome home, Admiral, Cassie said warmly. Good to be back, Chen replied, settling into the captain's chair. How do you feel? Stronger, faster, ready for whatever comes next. Through the viewport, Chen could see the rest of the Prometheus fleet. 5 new warships were complete and operational. Another 12 were under construction at shipyards around the solar system. Each one was named after a crew member who died in the original battle. Earth's fleet had grown from 50 ships to 200. Other Council species had provided advanced technology in exchange for Kimura's designs. Humanity was no longer the weakest species in the galaxy. All ships report ready for departure, Okoye reported. Where are we going? Park asked.